"Save my sisters first," she begged. The scout cut her last and never forgot her face. The planet Orion, 7, was nothing more than a barren wasteland, a dry land with little to offer. It was the kind of place most people avoided, but for the settlers who lived there, it was home. Among them was Sierra, a woman with long black hair, sharp eyes, and a fierce spirit. She had grown up on this planet, and though life was tough, it was her life. Sierra lived with her 2 younger sisters, Clara and May, in a small settlement surrounded by sand dunes and mountains. They had worked hard to carve out a life here, growing crops in the little fertile land the planet offered. The settlement was small, but it had a community, a family of settlers who relied on one another for survival. That's how it was in the frontier. Trust was everything. Today, however, trust was shattered. A loud, shrill noise split the air, followed by the sound of engines. The sky was filled with the growl of ships, marauder ships, dark and menacing. Sierra looked up, her heart pounding her chest. She had seen these ships before. The Red Scorpions, a gang of ruthless space marauders who roamed the outer galaxy, attacking peaceful settlements and leaving nothing behind but destruction. They had come for one thing: slaves. Sierra's heart raced. She grabbed Clara and May, pulling them close to her side. "Stay down," she whispered, her voice tight with fear. She had to protect them. They were all she had left, but it was too late. The marauders landed on the outskirts of the settlement, and within moments, men dressed in dark armor and helmets began storming through the settlement, firing their blasters. Panic erupted as the settlers ran in all directions, trying to escape the attack. But there was no escape. "Stay inside," Sierra shouted to Clara and May, shoving them behind the small shelter of their house. "Don't move unless I tell you." She grabbed a rifle from the corner and rushed out into the chaos, her breath heavy, her heart beating faster with every step. She was no fighter, not like the men who were trained to fight, but she had to try. She couldn't just stand by and let them take her family. The marauders didn't give her a choice. As she moved forward, one of them spotted her and charged at her with a blaster raised. Sierra aimed quickly, firing first. The man fell to the ground with a loud thud, but the battle was far from over. More marauders rushed in from all sides. "Get back inside!" Sierra screamed at the other settlers as she continued to fight off the invaders. She took cover behind a stack of crates, trying to control her breathing. "Keep calm. Keep fighting." That was the only thing she could think as the sounds of gunfire filled the air. Her sisters were still inside, but they wouldn't be safe for long. She had to act fast. Suddenly, a loud explosion rang out. A nearby building collapsed, throwing dust and debris into the air. In the midst of the smoke, Sierra saw a figure, tall, broad-shouldered, and moving with purpose. A man in military attire holding a blaster. The man's eyes scanned the chaos as he walked toward her, his face grim, his movements calm despite the violence around him. Sierra didn't know who he was, but she knew one thing: he was not one of the marauders. He spotted her and approached quickly, his voice cutting through the noise. "Are you all right?" he asked, his tone urgent. "I will be when they're gone," Sierra snapped, still holding a rifle. "You need to help me. My sisters—" She stopped herself, swallowing hard. "They're inside. They'll take them if we don't stop them." The man's eyes flickered with recognition. He nodded. "I'll do what I can." Without another word, he moved into the fray, firing his blaster with deadly precision. His soldiers, dressed in similar gear, began clearing the settlement, pushing the marauders back. But it was clear this wasn't going to be an easy fight. Sierra's heart was in her throat as she scanned the chaos, desperately searching for her sisters. She saw Clara and May near the entrance of the house, crouched down behind a barrel, their faces pale with fear. She sprinted toward them, pulling them into her arms. "Get to the house!" she shouted. Now. They didn't hesitate. Together they rushed back inside, locking the door behind them. Sierra's heart raced as she checked the windows, peering through the cracks to see the battle unfolding outside. The man in military gear was cutting down marauder after marauder, his blaster blazing with each shot. He moved with a skill that Sierra could never have imagined. He was no ordinary soldier. But even with him fighting on their side, the marauders weren't giving up. They were taking prisoners. Sierra knew that if they didn't act quickly, they would lose everyone. She turned to May, who was trembling beside her. "Stay hidden, stay safe." "I will," May whispered, clinging to her. Sierra didn't wait. She grabbed her rifle again and pushed open the door, stepping into the fray once more. She wouldn't let the marauders take her family. Not without a fight. The man with the blaster was nearby, but Sierra didn't have time to wait for him. She had to act now. She aimed and fired, taking down another marauder. The blast sent the man stumbling back, and Sierra didn't hesitate to move forward, firing again. But in the confusion, she didn't notice the marauder sneaking up behind her. The sound of blaster fire rang out, and suddenly everything went dark. Sierra awoke to the soft hum of engines and the scent of something sterile. Her head throbbed, and when she tried to move, she realized she was lying on something soft. The world was blurry, but as her eyes adjusted, she saw a ceiling, a metallic one. She blinked, trying to focus. A ship! Sierra's gaze snapped toward the man who spoke. It was the soldier, Lucas, as she remembered. His uniform was different from the Marauders, but there was something about him that seemed different now. He was no longer the distant soldier from the chaos. He was now a man who had saved her life. "Where am I?" Sierra asked, her voice hoarse. "On my ship. I couldn't leave you behind," Lucas answered, his voice calm, but there was a weight to it. "You were knocked out cold when I found you." Sierra tried to sit up, but a sharp pain shot through her head. She winced and settled back down, looking around. The small room was clean, minimal, just the essentials. The quiet hum of the ship made her feel even more disoriented. She ran her hand through her dark hair, still damp with sweat from the battle. "My sisters?" she asked, her voice filled with panic. "They're fine," Lucas replied quickly. "They're safe. They're in another room. I made sure no one took them." Sierra let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Her heart still pounded in her chest. She had seen people taken by marauders before, and those who were taken never returned. "Thank you," Sierra whispered. She didn't know what else to say. She hadn't expected anyone to come for them. The thought of those marauders taking her sisters had haunted her, and now they were safe. For now. Lucas nodded but didn't speak. He seemed lost in his thoughts, staring out the window of the ship. Sierra wanted to thank him again, but she could see there was something else weighing on him. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "You don't have to thank me. I didn't do it for gratitude." Sierra frowned, her brow furrowing. "Then why?" "I didn't want you to die. You made me remember something I had buried." Sierra could see the conflict in his eyes. His voice had an edge, almost like he was trying to justify his actions to himself. "I'm not some hero," Lucas continued. "I was just supposed to survey the planet, but when I saw what you were fighting for, I couldn't leave you there." Sierra looked at him, still trying to understand his words. "And now?" Lucas stood up, moving to a console on the far wall. He began typing quickly, as if trying to put distance between them with actions rather than words. "I'll get you to the nearest station. You can go back to your sisters, figure out what to do next. I've got my own mission." Sierra sat up, feeling the weight of the moment. "What if I want to finish this?" Lucas froze, his fingers hovering over the console. He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "Finish what?" "End what they started," Sierra said, her voice firm. "I can't just run. Not after everything that happened. I won't." Lucas exhaled slowly, frustration flickering across his face. "You don't understand. You're not a soldier. They'll kill you. And if they take your sisters again?" "They won't," Sierra interrupted, her voice sharp. "I'll make sure of it." Lucas's jaw tightened, and Sierra could see him weighing the situation in his mind. She could see the conflict inside him, but she wasn't backing down. She didn't care if she wasn't a soldier. She had lost too much already. She wasn't going to lose her family. After a long moment, Lucas finally nodded, though reluctantly. "Fine, I'll help. But you follow my lead, got it?" Sierra nodded, relieved. "I'm not asking for much. Just give me a chance to fight." The ship's engines hummed louder as it ascended into the empty expanse of space. For the first time in what felt like forever, Sierra allowed herself to relax, even if just a little. They had a mission, a goal. The Marauders would pay for what they did. As the ship moved further into space, Lucas checked the navigation screen, then glanced at Sierra. "We'll need a plan. We can't just fly in and start shooting. This isn't some local skirmish. You're going to need more than just a gun." Sierra's eyes flashed with determination. "I don't care how many they are. They took my sisters. And I'll do whatever it takes to get them back." Lucas looked at her, seeing the fire in her eyes. He had seen that kind of determination before, and it had never been easy to stand in the way. He knew they weren't just up against ordinary criminals. The Red Scorpions were notorious for their brutality. But there was something about Sierra that told him she wouldn't back down. Not this time. "All right," Lucas said finally. "I'll get you the weapons you need. But we need to stay smart. Don't do anything reckless." Sierra leaned back, her fingers digging into the armrest of her seat. "Reckless is all I know," she said softly. It was then that Lucas allowed a small smile to tug at the corners of his lips. It was faint, but it was there. He had no idea what he had gotten himself into, but somehow he didn't mind. Not this time. The ship hummed softly as they made their way toward the Marauder base. The tension between them was thick, but there was also a strange camaraderie forming, a bond forged through shared danger and the knowledge that they both had something to fight for. And in the silence that followed, Sierra made a promise to herself. This wasn't just about her sisters anymore. This was about fighting for the future, her future, no matter what it cost. The ship hummed steadily as it glided through the empty stretch of space. Sierra sat still, her eyes fixed on the view outside. Stars glinted against the darkness of the universe, but her mind was far from peaceful. Thoughts of her sisters, trapped in the Marauder's stronghold, churned in her mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. She had to act quickly, before the Marauders did something irreversible. And she knew the longer they waited, the harder it would be to break in. Lucas sat across from her, his brow furrowed as he studied the navigation screen. His hands moved over the controls with practiced ease, but there was an air of tension in the way he held himself. Sierra could see it. He was preparing for something. "You're quiet," Sierra said, breaking the silence. Lucas glanced up, his expression unreadable. "Just thinking." "About what?" Sierra asked. "The base is heavily guarded. If we go in without a plan, we're as good as dead," Lucas said, his voice cold. "But I'll get you in. I have a few contacts who owe me favors." Sierra leaned forward, her gaze hard. "What do we need?" Lucas looked at her for a long moment, considering. "You'll need weapons, explosives, and a good strategy. I know where we can get all of that, but we have to be smart. The Red Scorpions are no ordinary gang. They're vicious, and they don't leave anyone behind." "I didn't come this far to turn back," Sierra replied. "I'll do whatever it takes." Lucas paused. Something about her determination made him pause, something that reminded him of his past, his own battles, his own choices. He had learned long ago that nothing was ever truly free. But this time something felt different. There was no turning back now. He couldn't let her do this alone. "We'll stop at a weapons depot first," Lucas finally said, his voice steady. "Get the supplies we need. After that, it's all about getting in and getting your sisters." The ship moved toward the station, a small, hidden outpost in the depths of space. It was isolated, far from the eyes of the authorities, and perfect for people like Lucas who needed to disappear for a while. The station wasn't much, just a run-down place that sold old weapons, supplies, and information. But for their purposes, it would do. As they docked, Sierra could feel the tension in the air. This was the first step toward their goal, but she knew it wasn't going to be easy. The Red Scorpions would have eyes everywhere. They would be watching. Lucas led the way down the narrow hallways of the station, his boots echoing against the metal floor. Sierra followed, her fingers tightening around the handle of the blaster at her side. She had to keep her focus. She had to stay sharp. They entered a small room where an old man sat behind a desk. His clothes were worn, his face rough from years of hard living. He looked up at them as they walked in, his eyes narrowing. "Well, well," the man said, his voice rough. "Didn't expect company. What do you need?" "We're looking for weapons," Lucas said, his tone direct, "and I need information." The man's eyes flicked to Sierra, then back to Lucas. "You want to fight the Red Scorpions, huh?" Lucas nodded. "And she does too. We've got business to take care of." The man leaned back in his chair, studying them both. "I'm not saying it's impossible, but you're going to need more than just firepower. You need something that can punch through their defenses, and you need a way to get in without them noticing." Sierra didn't wait for Lucas to respond. She stepped forward, her eyes locked on the man. "Give us what we need. We don't have time for games." The man chuckled. "You've got a fire in you, girl." "I like that." He stood up, walking to a nearby crate and pulling out a series of weapons, a set of blasters, grenades, and a few hidden knives. "This should help you make an entrance," he said, tossing the items onto the table. "But you'll need a way in. You can't just walk through the front door." Lucas grabbed the weapons and nodded. "We'll figure that out. And there's a ship nearby that might be able to get you close. The Red Scorpions run a few illegal transports. They've got a base in the middle of the galaxy. I can give you coordinates." Sierra nodded. "That's all we need." "Now tell us where to go." The old man scribbled down a set of coordinates on a piece of paper and handed it to Lucas. "Go here, but don't expect it to be easy. You'll be walking into the heart of their operation. Sierra felt a chill run down her spine. The heart of the red scorpions. But it wasn't fear that gripped her. It was resolve. They had come this far, and she wasn't about to turn back. "Thanks," Lucas said, taking the coordinates. "We'll be in touch if we need anything else." They left the station quickly, moving back to the ship. The air between them was thick with purpose, and Sierra could sense that Lucas was ready. He had his plan. And so did she. As they made their way toward the coordinates, Sierra couldn't help but think of her sisters. They were so close. Just a few more steps and she would have them back. The journey through space was slow, the stars outside the ship offering no comfort. Sierra sat in silence, her fingers brushing against the blaster she had taken from the depot. It was a reminder of what was at stake. Lucas's voice broke through her thoughts. "We're almost there." Sierra nodded, standing up. Her heart pounded in her chest. This was it, the moment they had been working toward. The moment they would either succeed or fail. As the ship neared the coordinates, the cold void of space seemed to press in around them. The base loomed ahead, a black, sprawling fortress surrounded by smaller ships. It was heavily guarded, a maze of metal and stone floating in the dark. "We'll need to move quickly," Lucas said, his voice low. "Once we land, we make our move." Sierra nodded, her heart racing. There was no turning back. This was it. They had reached the heart of the red scorpions. The ship hovered in the dark space, casting a shadow on the red scorpion's base below. The fortress-like station was massive, its walls covered in thick metal plating, with security turrets scanning the space around it. It was clear that getting in would not be easy, but Sierra and Lucas had come too far to turn back now. Lucas glanced over at Sierra, who was staring out at the base. The hard lines of her face showed nothing but determination. He had seen that look before, the kind of look that meant nothing would stop her. She wasn't just here for her sisters anymore. She was here to end what had begun. "We land on the outer perimeter," Lucas said quietly. "Once we're on the ground, we move fast. I know a way in, but we'll need to stay low until we're inside. No mistakes." Sierra nodded, her hand resting on the blaster at her side. She was ready. The ship descended slowly, its engines cutting through the stillness of space as they moved toward the landing zone. The base loomed closer, its dark walls stretching up into the cold night. Sierra's heart thudded in her chest. This was it, the final step. Lucas guided the ship into a hidden crevice in the base's outer wall. He brought it down with steady hands, the craft shaking slightly as the landing gear touched the ground. Sierra's breath caught in her throat. This was the moment they had been preparing for. Lucas powered down the ship and stood up, moving toward the back hatch. Sierra followed close behind. Her mind raced with everything they had planned, how they would infiltrate the base, how they would find her sisters, how they would get out. "Stay close," Lucas warned as they exited the ship. The air was thick with the sound of distant machinery, and the smell of rust and oil lingered in the cold, metallic air. They had to move quickly. The longer they stayed out here, the more chances the red scorpions had to detect them. The two of them moved swiftly, their footsteps light against the hard surface of the base. Sierra's mind was laser-focused, blocking out everything except the task at hand. Her sisters were inside, somewhere, waiting for her. She couldn't waste a second. As they moved deeper into the base, they encountered the first of the guards. A group of marauders stood near a security checkpoint talking among themselves. Lucas held up a hand, signaling for Sierra to stop. He quietly pulled out a small device from his pocket and tapped a few buttons. The guards were distracted by a false signal, and with a flick of his wrist, Lucas moved forward, taking out the nearest guard with a quick and silent move. Sierra's heart raced. She had never been involved in an operation like this. But the sight of the guard's unconscious body reminded her of what was at stake. Her sisters. They had to make it through this. Lucas signaled for her to follow, and they continued down the narrow hallway, taking out guards one by one, each move executed with precision and speed. The deeper they went, the more difficult it became to stay unnoticed. The base was crawling with red scorpions, and their presence was becoming more dangerous by the second. Finally, they reached a door at the end of a long corridor. The security was tight, but Lucas had a plan. He pulled out a small explosive charge and placed it on the door. "This will create a distraction," he whispered. "We move in when it's clear." Sierra nodded. She didn't have time to question the plan. She trusted him. He had been right so far. With a quiet beep, the explosive detonated. The door blew open, sending debris flying in all directions. Smoke filled the air, and chaos erupted inside the room. The guards were momentarily disoriented, giving Sierra and Lucas the perfect opportunity to slip inside. The room was large, filled with cells. and there, in the far corner, were her sisters, Clara and May. They were chained to the wall, their faces pale and their bodies bruised, but they were alive. Sierra's heart soared as she rushed toward them. "Clara!" "May!" she called out, her voice choked with emotion. Clara looked up first, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Sierra?" she whispered, as if she couldn't believe her own eyes. Then, without warning, she broke free from the chains, rushing into Sierra's arms. May followed soon after, tears streaming down her face. "We thought we'd never see you again," she sobbed. Sierra held them both tightly, relief flooding through her. She had made it, they were safe. But their reunion was short-lived. The sound of footsteps echoed through the hallway. More guards were coming. "We need to move! Now!" Lucas urged, pulling out his blaster. He fired a shot down the corridor, taking out the first wave of guards. "Sierra, get them to the ship. I'll cover you." Sierra hesitated, but only for a moment. There was no time for doubt. She grabbed her sister's hands and led them quickly toward the exit. The path was dangerous, but they had no choice. They had to get out before reinforcements arrived. The halls seemed to stretch on forever. Every turn was met with more guards, more fighting. Lucas moved like a shadow, his blaster never missing its mark. Sierra stayed focused, her heart pounding as she led Clara and May through the maze of the base. They were so close now, just a few more steps and they would be free. Finally, they reached the landing bay. The ship was in sight, but so were the Red Scorpions. The base was waking up. The alarms were blaring. "They're not giving up," Lucas said grimly, his face set in determination. "But we're not done yet." The three of them sprinted toward the ship, the blaster fire ringing out around them. Sierra's heart thudded in her chest as they reached the ship. Lucas covered them from behind, ensuring they had enough time to climb aboard. Just as they made it inside, a wave of guards appeared at the entrance, guns raised. "Go!" Lucas shouted. With a final push, Sierra slammed the door shut, and the ship's engines roared to life. The craft shot into the air, blasting through the base's defenses. Sierra looked out the window as the base grew smaller and smaller, the Red Scorpion stronghold fading into the distance. It was over. Sierra collapsed into a seat, her body exhausted but her spirit victorious. Clara and May sat beside her, holding each other tightly. They were safe. They had made it dire. Lucas moved toward the cockpit, glancing back at them one last time before he sat down at the controls. "You're free now," he said quietly, his voice softer than before. "And so am I." Sierra looked at him, her expression a mix of gratitude and understanding. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Lucas simply nodded, his eyes on the stars ahead. They had all been forged in fire tonight, and together they had survived.